Altrincham Football Club, just 6 miles from Manchester United's Old Trafford ground, but a world away from the Premiership lifestyle. They compete in the 5th tier of an increasingly competitive world of English football, their part-time status even more impressive when facing full-time professionals from their non-league rivals. As well as the players, the ground staff, the stewards and the turnstile operators are all volunteers. And no, he's not getting paid to muck out the dressing room, it's Alti manager Graham Heathcote. The club is run mainly by volunteers, not for money but for the sake of their team. Money to help with the admin and ground maintenance comes from their hard work and the many raffles, functions, auctions and quizzes they organise. There was a time when silly money was being spent at Altrincham, and with debts of around £700,000, the club twice faced a possible winding up order.
See, we sat down Ridgeway Road, it was, and we had a meeting and the place was going to fall. Twice I've been through that situation. And it's just reality.
The reality was we were literally, a day or two from going under. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but it was very, very nerve-wracking. And you began to think, well, what happens if there isn't an Altrincham Football Club? What are you going to do? And that's quite a frightening thought for the fans who've been supporting the club for many, many years.
It had taken a long time for Aldi to rack up such debts, going back to 1961 when local business partners Peter Swales and Noel White took over at the club.
Their first season they invested in former league club players who just 3 or 4 years before had been playing top level football, had been playing in the FA Cup, former internationals, and Altrincham became known as the team, the millionaire team, if you like, the non-league Manchester United, the team with money.
Their reputation has remained, and until threatened with extinction, were continuing to spend more than the club could sustain.
I sat at a meeting at this club and was told at that meeting for the following season this club had budgeted to lose 25 grand. I said, well, we've got whatever, we've got 700 grand of the debt. Why are we budgeting to lose another 25 grand? Oh well, we'll make it up with this or we'll make it up with that, but to start off with we're budgeting to make a loss. And that's the route we were in. And that's why we got 700 grand before that conversation even. But even at the end of that, we were still budgeting to make a loss. And that's why when you read all these other clubs that are budgeting to make a loss, you just think, one day the balloon's going to go up there. Yeah. There's so many balloons waiting to be popped in football, it's untrue.
But Alti's balloon wasn't about to pop just yet. The problem was the directors on the board saw their money as loans rather than long-term investments. Once the debts started rising, they walked away, taking their chequebooks with them and demanding to be reimbursed for their losses. The future looked bleak until Graham Heathcote, assistant manager at the time, came up with a plan.
I managed to persuade Jeff Goodwin to come in and form a board with Graham Rowley. Andrew Shaw came on board. They formed a 3-man board. Again, we were within 24 hours of going under, and I'd sat here with bailiffs and things like that, which is not very pleasant, but I'd done it.
I was doing the coaches for the club. Graham Heathcote rang me up and the club owed me £5,000, I can remember the figure. And he said, oh, I've got a problem, we can't pay you, because he was the secretary then, I think, Graham. The board and the chairman have all walked, so nobody's to sign any cheques. So, can you come along and be a director? Well, previous to that, I'd been down here probably a month before, or 2 months before, because Mark Harris had me in there and invited me on the board, and they wanted £25,000 each of us, and there was no way I was parting with that because the figures didn't add up at that time. So, and I didn't really like football anyway, so I walked away. And then of course Graham's asked me to come down. I've gone home and he's rang me up, where are you? And I said, well, I'm at home. He said, but we need you. So I came down, didn't know what I was letting myself in for, signed on the dotted line, and that's how I become a director. And I thought I'd be there for 3 months, and I've been here 5 years.
It's been hard work, and I think sometimes you do get a bit depressed about the fact that you're actually paying off previous people's debts rather than actually pushing the club forward. But I think we have actually managed to actually go forward, and I think by the way the team has progressed and gained 2 promotions in the last 3 years, or the last 4 years, just goes to show that even though we have been being quite frugal, we have actually managed to push the club on at the same time as paying off inherent debts.
Alti have always been part-time, but they enjoyed great successes, particularly during the 1980s when they were known as the giant killers of non-league football.
The mid-70s through the 80s, Altrincham became one of the most famous clubs in the country for its FA Cup exploits, often beating Football League clubs both home and away, culminating in the magnificent victory at Birmingham City, who at that time were a top division side, 2-1 in the third round of the Cup, to gain one and only appearance in the fourth round at York City.
It's probably an era that really put this football club on the map, and anybody in football, you say the name of Altrincham Football Club, it's well known, everybody knows it, and that was probably the year that really cemented its place in football in England, really.
Certainly the name Altrincham, I think, was known by a lot of people throughout the country that were not necessarily football followers. So successful were their cup exploits that for many seasons they were exempt to the first round proper of the FA Cup and came in with the then third and fourth division sides.
So John Davison now receives the FA Challenge Trophy and lifts it high into the air. And it's the Altrincham fans who are jumping up and down.
1986 saw them crowned FA Trophy champions on their third visit to the finals at Wembley. They beat Runcorn 1-0 in the final match to add a new chapter to Altrincham's success story.
To Birmingham, to Wembley, and now they are rewarded with the FA Trophy. And the cheers coming in now.
It was fantastic being part of that team. I would say it's probably the best team that I've played in non-league football. We were considered the Man United of non-league football. Very, very successful, very, very hungry. The team that I played in that went to Wembley, I would think is probably the two teams I played in at Wembley, the 81 team and the 86 team. I would say they're the best two sides that I've actually played in. The team that went to Wembley in 86 probably, I think, just shaded it. That was the team that went to Birmingham and won in the FA Cup. Fantastic squad, great players, good lads, and they were all winners.
As well as twice visiting Wembley, Paul was also honoured to be picked 3 times to play for his country at non-league level, despite a series of injuries.
In previous years, up till about 1984-85, I'd been picked in the squad but been injured and not had the opportunity to play, and in 1986 I finally fulfilled that ambition. Fantastic. You can't have a prouder moment in your life than representing your country.
And he's not the only one. Young midfielder Lewis Chalmers, at 20 years old, was the most recent Alti player to be called up, and he featured in England's 4-1 victory over Holland. Whilst the pull of full-time footy saw Lewis move to pastures new at Aldershot Town, Alti can still claim to be attracting those called up for international duty.
Before I was at Halifax, I was at Scarborough for 2 seasons, and I found myself on the bench quite a lot, and I got a bit of a reputation. It's not a bad one really as a super sub, so when I was coming on there, luckily I hit a bit of form. I was coming off the bench and I scored quite a few goals, so it was good to get the call up, and it was a good experience.
If you get picked now with the non-league boys now going full time, I think if you do get the opportunity to be picked up from Altrincham, you've got to be very proud of it. It's to be picked as a non-league player and training part time. I think it's a big achievement.
It did my parents; they were very proud. So, but even though I didn't make the final 11, it was just good. It was a good experience, and hopefully it'll prove a good one in the future.
Well, I went to St Kitts and Nevis for 2 weeks to try and qualify for the under-23s Olympic in China. I love going there because it's so hot, and like the island, it's just beautiful. Like when you get to see it. I've been before, and I know a few of the lads, so it's good to see him again. I've not seen him in a couple of months.
I think the club holds a record as well for having the most non-league players representing the country. I think it's about 78 caps, something like that in total, which is, phenomenal really.
Altrincham can also boast having players picked to go on tour with Sir Bobby Robson's international touring squad, the Middlesex Wanderers.
But we couldn't go the year before to Japan because we got to the playoff finals, so we went this time and went to Botswana, which is like South Africa, and we was expecting a luxurious holiday, but when we got there it's very remote, not the nicest place in the world, but it's just to promote football really in like sort of other countries.
It was nice to get picked for things like that. You know, it's a good experience to go away to Africa and play, you know, for a different team and stuff. So although it was in the summer, but it was a good experience, and I'd do the same again.
We only went for a week, but it's a long way to go. Just for a week, but when you get there you realise what football matters to people there, because like they was asking us for our kit at the end and our boots and what have you, and it's just such a totally different life to what we have.
So with all the history and successes on the field, why is it then that Altrincham are increasingly being thought of as Little Alty? Since the new board took over, the club has gone from strength to strength. In 2005, the club were crowned Cheshire Senior Cup champions, and the same year they gained promotion back into the conference, the highest tier of non-league football.
I don't know what everyone else's opinion. For the last 2 years, it's gone, in my opinion, up and up. When we first came back in it, people said to me, "You won't believe how much it's advanced," and I thought, people just saying that, covering the backsides really. But now, having been in it for beginning of 3 years, it has gone and gone and gone. And you know, again, I'll give you an analogy. Lewis Chalmers, speaking to one of the lads, what you doing at Aldershot? Training, we train twice a week. Training twice a day throughout pre-season. Twice a day. Session in the morning, bit of lunch, go home, back in the afternoon. Makes him in particular, a fitter player. So you know, we'll see what he does under that system. And it may point out to us all that look at the difference here. There's Lewis, part of us as a part-time player, decent player. Look at him now after full-time training.
And that is the problem that seems to be facing Altrincham at the moment. The league currently has 19 full-time teams in a league of 24, and the gulf between the have and the have-nots on paper seems to be getting increasingly wider. Last season, 3 of the 4 part-time sides were relegated, Alty's 52 points falling 1 short of safety, and they're only back in this league this season because of Boston's demotion.
It surprised me, Sharp, I don't know about you, but I'm just looking at the Blue Square Premier League table, the amount that are full-time. I mean, you hear about Southport, and you'd imagine the teams that was relegated to the Football League would still be full-time, but the majority, apart from Altrincham, Droylsden, Stafford, Histon and Farsley Celtic, are all full-time. Yeah. How do you think they can sustain paying wages, keeping the club going, when on gates of under 2,000? Because I'm under the impression it needs more than 2,000, and then bring all the big teams to come to you, we get 3,000, so at least keep you ahead of one.
Yeah, I think the league doesn't lie, guys. I think at the bottom of the league, you know, the part-time teams are. And I think in that league itself, it will be difficult for part-time teams against professional outfits. But you quite rightly said, you know, how can you sustain it? The only thing I'm looking at, they must have massive financial backing. It's so difficult now. Full-time teams, every time will be fitter, they'll be more organised, they'll have more time to work throughout the week, they can work on things every single day. So they're obviously the favourites, and they get more money to bring in better players, so they're always going to be up there. And I think it's becoming harder and harder for part-time teams to get in it. I go look at the League of Wales, where my son's involved, and look at TNS, who have won the league, they're full-time. You look at Cloneckley now, who are full-time. You expect that to be 1 and 2, you know, 1 and 2 every year. So I think it's becoming more and more difficult, and I feel sorry for the teams who are part-time, but in another way I think hats off to them, because they're not chasing that goal because they can't afford it. So I think you've got to cut your cloth accordingly, and fair play to them.